Welcome to Grad School Demystified. Grad School Demystified is an event hosted by the Cornell Undergraduate Research Board. My name is Jennifer, and I'll be one of the moderators for today's event. And I'd also like to allow one of the other moderators to also introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzie. I am the other co-chair of the Outreach Committee of CURB, and we're so excited for everyone to be here today, and stay tuned for a great panel.
Yeah, so tonight we're joined by a wonderful group of current graduate students who are really eager to share their experiences, their tips, their challenges, everything about like their path to getting to graduate school. The event will be split up into 3 different sections, so 3 different panels. And they'll each have a different panel or group of graduate students. So the first section will be about the pre-grad school preparation process. The second panel will be about the application process. And the third panel will be about life in graduate school.
Each round will have a small Q&A session where you can ask questions based on each round. And you can either send them through the Q&A session or a Q&A function on Zoom, the webinar format, or if you would like to remain anonymous, you can private message me, Lizzie, and I will ask questions to the panelists. And then at the end of the entire panel, we'll have a big Q&A session where anyone can ask questions about anything regarding grad school. So this event will be recorded, and we'll be posting this on the CURB's YouTube channel. We'll send an announcement once it's uploaded, just so you guys can refer back to it if you would like. And now we're just going to have our panelists briefly introduce themselves with their name and year field of study. So first, yeah, we can just go in the order that's on the screen.
Great. I'm Sarah. I am in my 3rd year as a biochemistry, molecular, and cell biology graduate student. Yep, I think that's all.
Hi, I'm Tian, and I am starting my 4th year as a PhD student in chemistry and chemical biology.
Hi, I'm Sumya. I'm starting my 6th year as a computer science PhD student.
I believe Jenny isn't here yet, so we can go on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm a 5th year PhD student in robotics, specifically design and AI for human-robot interaction.
Hi, I'm Aileen, and I'm a 1st year PhD student at the Center for Applied Mathematics.
Hi, everyone. I'm Freddie. I'm also a 1st year in the Genetics, Genomics, and Development program.
Hi, I'm Jerry. I'm a 2nd year PhD student in computer science.
Sorry, my name is Brian Aguilera, and I'm a 2nd year in Genetics, Genomics, and Development.
I'm Mitch. I'm also in Genetics, Genomics, and Development, and I'm a 3rd year PhD student.
Hi, I'm George. I'm a 4th year chemical and chemistry biologist. Used to be in marketing and completely changed lives at the age of 26.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn. I am now a 5th year grad student in Genetics, Genomics, and Development.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hales. I'm a 2nd year grad student in the chemistry department.
Hi, my name is Julian, and I'm a 5th year PhD student in Genetics, Genomics, and Development.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ariana Bartlett, and I'm a 3rd year Genetics, Genomics, and Development student.
And Melissa isn't here yet, so those were all the introductions. And Jen, if you want to begin with round 1.
Yeah, of course. Let's go into round 1. So round 1 will be about the pre-graduate school process and kind of life and how to prepare for maybe choosing graduate school and to see if graduate school is right for you. So our panelists for our round 1, which is that first slide that introduced themselves. Our first question is, how do I know if graduate school is right for me?
So I think one of the challenges that often faces at least a lot of like biologists and STEM undergraduate students is sort of the choice between graduate school and medical school. And in general, I think it applies to lots of other fields as well. But for me, how to know if graduate school is right for you is sort of based on the types of questions you like to ask. So if you're liking to ask the types of questions that sort of push the boundary of what's already known, and you don't mind being in an area that, you know, it's really difficult to find information, and you're sort of, you know the most of what you're doing, I think graduate school is a great path. And also just, you have to be pretty self-motivated for graduate school as well. A lot of the work is based on your interest and your passion, your questions, and your work. So that's another really important thing for deciding if graduate school is right for you.
I would like to add that I think, yeah, like kind of going off of what she was saying about the types of questions you like to ask, also just what your career goals all are and like what you're passionate about, I think influences whether or not you should go to grad school. Because, well, like in speaking with other grad students and professionals and professors and all that, graduate school is not always the best move, like depending on what you want to do. So I have a mathematics background, and one thing that faces you when you finish a degree in mathematics, or probably similar in computer science, is should I go into industry and like make money right away, or should I go to grad school and wait like 5 to 6 years before I can actually make some money, or should I go for a master's or a PhD? So it, like a lot of it really depends on what you like to do and what you want to do. And so I would encourage everyone to talk with as many either graduate students, professors, professionals as possible about what you like to do and what your career goals are, because then they can let you know like, oh, that sounds like you might really fit well or do well in grad school, or it sounds like you really want to work in industry, or it sounds like you really should be looking for internships, or actually there's this other option that you didn't even know about that existed for what you want to do. So I definitely encourage you to talk to as many people as you can about what you're passionate about and what you like to do, because that might help you figure out whether or not graduate school is the best move to get you where you want to go. Because like you're all like most, like I think everyone is capable of going for graduate school. It's just about whether or not that's like the right move for what you want to do.
So one thing I'd like to add is like for these kinds of things, like for me, the best way I knew that graduate school was right for me, and this is very much coming from a computer science, I'm not sure how much this applies in general, but do some research in undergrad. So like it'll kind of tell you, like, do you like being in this graduate school environment or not? And like if you do like a semester or two and it's not for you, you kind of know like grad school is not right for you. And then if you really start to enjoy it, then you kind of can start looking into grad school seriously and start asking some of the questions that Maylene and Sarah were talking about just now.
Echoing lots of that, and again, I'm in engineering and partially computer science, but also doing things that you don't think that you'd like to do. So if you think you want to do grad school, you should also still do internships to see if you actually like industry, especially for engineering. A lot of the fun work is still in industry. So you have to make sure that you see both sides of the coin to make sure that you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, one thing related to that, it was actually an industry internship that convinced me that grad school was right for me. So it was so like definitely do both.
Okay, that was great. Let's go to our second question for this round. How should undergraduate students prepare for applying to graduate school, and is research experience necessary for applying to graduate school?
My understanding is like research experience is definitely recommended for if you're applying to a graduate program. Like I'm sure there are people who did not get to do research that applied to graduate school programs, but probably more like master's programs where they're going to get an exposure to research before like doing a PhD. So it's like necessary, but also if you're like a senior and now you haven't had research experience and now you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I want to go to grad school. It's not the end of the world. Like there are still options available. You can still do some stuff, like there's post-bac programs and all these things that I can talk about later too, like if you email me. So it's necessary, but also like don't panic if you're a senior and you don't have research experience, but you're like really interested in grad school. But definitely if you're not a senior and you have the chance to seek out research, you should. And then how should undergraduate students prepare for applying to grad school? I think, I mean, in general, network, like find people, I kind of said this in the last question, but find professors to talk to and maybe industry professionals and like graduate students to talk to about like your interests so that you can like figure out, oh, okay, like this is the kind of research I'm interested in, so I should be looking for research projects I can do in this field so that when I go to grad school, I already know like what programs to apply to or like where to start looking. So yeah, I guess research is a good one. And just networking, because like the more you meet people, the more likely you are to know like where is a good place to apply for what you want to do, or like where is not a good place to apply because like it's not a very welcoming environment or something like that. Like just talk to a lot of people. If you can go to conferences, that's like really awesome. If you can do research, even better. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. So for computer science, I think research experience is almost like necessary, but like again, as Maylene said, like it doesn't matter if you do it in undergrad or if you do like a master's and then apply to a PhD. But you definitely like, it's just, I think more and more people are getting research experience in some way or another, whether like, yeah, through one of the options. So like, I think for CS, it's pretty necessary to actually have someone who can speak about how you are as a researcher in your letter recommendations.
I will say though, don't panic if you are, like approaching your senior year and you don't know if you want to go to grad school or anything yet, because I didn't make the choice to go to grad school, I don't think, until about a month before the applications were due. And then I sort of like, I definitely, if this is something you want to do, I definitely don't recommend waiting until a month before, everything is due to try and get it together. But if you don't know and you're not sure, you can pull it together sort of last minute. So it's not like this long, drawn out sort of, you have to have known for years that this is something you're going to do. You can definitely succeed in the application process and admission process to grad school, sort of making the decision a little bit maybe late.
Yeah, I think I realized as Sarah was talking, I may have been a bit like prescriptive in my answer, but there's many paths to get to grad school. So like, regardless of when you decide and so on, like there's always a way to get research. There's always ways to do like what you need to do to eventually end up in grad school. So like, don't panic if you're a senior, don't panic if you're a junior, or wherever you may be in your career.
One last little thing, if I could add, or just was someone going to say something? Did I
Oh,
interrupt?
yeah, I was just going to add that when applying to, there are a number of different programs that all have very similar names and the description of them seem very similar. So my advice would be to start to, if you are interested, to start to look at a number of different programs and see kind of what they're all about. Because I actually applied to the chemical biology program, but it was a very vague description as to what that really is. And it turns out that kind of is all encompassing. So just try to see what's out there and get a very general idea of what some of the options are that you can actually apply to.
I wanted to add, in terms of a mindset, like shifting away from that undergrad grade-oriented, like grades and GPA and like resume is super important, more towards a research-oriented perspective. And also reading, writing, and presenting are super important. And I feel like, at least from my engineering background, we didn't really get much training in terms of that. So finding opportunities to improve your reading, writing, and presentation are super duper important. And it'll help you on the application as well.
One other quick thing just to prepare for applying is reach out to people in programs that you're interested in, whether that's like professors or current grad students or anything like that, almost everyone is really happy to talk to you about, like whether it be their science or, their projects or their area of study. They are more than happy to answer questions about, what life is like in that specific city, at that specific university, in that program. So don't be shy about, sending emails to strangers. They're usually happy to help.
Besides those, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, besides those experiences and knowledge preparation, I think it's also good to just take a moment to see where this part of life you want to spend it at. So like, which city do you want to go to? Because grad school is not a short time. It's going to be 4 to 6 years, and you're going to see if this is the place where you want to spend your life. You're going to live probably by yourself for the after undergraduate time, and then also might want to think about if graduate school doesn't work out for you, what's the plan B, just so that you have that safety piece of safety net, just like so that you know that, oh, if this is not for me, then what's next.
All right, that was great. Now we're done with round 2. So we're going to ask for any other questions for our round 1. Sorry, I think we finished round 1. So any questions for our round 1 panelists related to kind of the pre-grad school path and preparation process. And Lizzie will facilitate this discussion.
Yes. So if you guys have any questions regarding that, just send them in the chat right now, and we'll spend a few minutes just on pre-graduate school related questions. So there is one question, and oh, there's many questions. Okay. So Katie asks, how can you tell if your grades/resume are related for that school?
If you really want to know about the specific school, I think talk to someone who is already at that program. That's probably your best shot.
And actually for at least for CS like schools here, you can get, wait, hang on. Yeah, for hang on a sec. Yeah, so like for CS, you can actually talk to like the professors here who know a lot about like the other schools and the grad students, and ask about like how your application looks and so on.
Some of the programs I applied to even like published their like average or median GRE scores. So like you could compare your score to their normal like admitted class, which I personally did not like, and I did not really want to apply to those schools because I felt like if GPA and GRE scores are like what really matters to you, then I don't know. That's like, I don't know. That's not a priority. I don't think that should be a priority. So sometimes they'll publish that information. And I think they usually have like a minimum GPA. Like some programs will even say don't apply if your GPA is below this, which again, I don't know how I feel about that, but yeah.
So I know people that got admitted with a GPA below that minimum GPA when they applied. So like it's like, I think in terms of the like it might be the school like administration or something imposing a minimum GPA cutoff, but the department actually like doesn't really care that much. So there's all sorts of things that kind of go on in the background.
Okay, great. We have a question. I came in a little late. I heard that research was almost mandatory for computer science. Is it that way for other fields as well?
I would say, so I'm biochemistry and molecular biology, and research experience was pretty necessary for us too. But again, that doesn't have to be like undergraduate research experience. Mine just happened to be undergraduate research experience. But I have plenty of friends that are, in my cohort in my year that didn't do undergrad research and they got a master's after, or they did like a post-bac research program, or some of them just did REUs at other universities and did like a summer research. I don't know what that's actually stands for, but they did that to get the, some research experience. But that's, one of the things like Maylene was saying about how grades, they might post median scores, but often when you get here and you go to interviews for graduate school and stuff, it's really going to come quite a lot down into like, can you, talk about research, whether it be yours or theirs, and can you, have a conversation about, some big abstract ideas.
We'll just take, I think, one more question for this round, and then we can answer the ones at the end when all the rounds are over. There's a question, tips for personal statement.
I think for personal statement, it's not actually, it's not personal statement. I think it's statement of purpose, which is a little different from what you wrote for your for college. So the main thing is, I think they like to see that you know what you want to do and what you have been preparing for it. So a sense of purpose, statement of purpose, and then how you have been preparing, showing your previous experience. Doesn't have to be just research, internship, anything that you have had accumulating to reach this final goal. And then a little bit about why this place, this school, this program is gonna fit into that goal of yours. So yeah, that's 3 things.
The biggest tip I have for the personal statement and like also in general for the application process itself is to try and find someone, to try and find a grad student mentor or like a professor mentor who will help you through like a lot of these questions and applications, because the personal statement, like they're sometimes looking for particular things, and it's really hard for someone who like without that guidance to actually know what they're doing. But the people reading the application also know this, so like they don't hold it too much against you, but like it's something that definitely you want to get help if you can.
This kind of relates to another question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, go through several drafts and show them to your professors and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, several drafts is always important for anything we're writing. My answer kind of relates to a question in the chat asking, what if you want to study something unrelated to your undergrad major? And I think showing that you're passionate and adaptable to whatever your research might throw at you, like you might go into something totally different. So my background is mechanical engineering, but now I do mostly computer science and AI related work. And I think showing that I was able to switch into that different field, which I didn't have a strong enough background in, is also important because it makes you more, I guess, attractive to different schools and programs and professors.
I guess just one more thing that Mitch just said in the chat that I think is important, in case people aren't reading that, is that a lot of schools are phasing out the GRE. So I know that seems like a big stressful thing applying for grad school, but don't worry so much about that, and make sure that your school you're applying to actually requires it before you spend like $200 to take a standardized test.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm not in this round, but I wanted to just jump in really quick about the GRE thing. That's actually really important because right before I took it, I like looked at programs and they were like, we're still requiring it, and I took it, and then the next summer they removed it. So please check your programs before you take it because it is very expensive.
Okay, great answers, everyone. Just in the interest of time, we're going to move on to. So Jen, if you want to click the next slide, please stick around for the end of the panel when you can ask all these questions. There's a lot coming in.
All right, so our second round is going to be about the application process. So actually those questions are a perfect segue into this round. So for our second round panelists, we're going to be looking at this question first. When should I apply to graduate school? And do you recommend maybe taking a gap year?
So I can give a crack at this. Basically, there are roughly 3 times you can apply. You can apply right after your undergrad, right after a master's program, or after spending some time in industry. And it kind of boils down to like when you feel prepared, I think is it. And like, whether or not you're like ready for the particular time and kind of energy commitment of whatever program you're applying to. So I personally, I worked for a year and a half in industry before applying to my PhD program. And I left undergrad knowing that I wanted to do that, but I just wanted to do something different outside of the academic world before going back to grad school. But I think plenty of other people have had different paths that they found worked for them as well.
And to add to that, I remember I went to an ACS meeting, and there was somebody there that was discussing, they were in charge of reviewing applications. And they mentioned that the students that went right from high school to college to graduate school were called momentum students, meaning that the momentum of feeling the need to just go to the next thing pushes a lot of students into grad school that may or may not want to be there. So if you were to decide to try to do something different or to see what else life has to offer you first, and then apply to grad school after that, that shows that you really are interested in whatever you are looking to, whatever program or whatever field you're looking to do research in. So that actually can help you in the long run. So if you have any type of apprehension or you're really not sure or really don't know, it may not be the best idea to just go right into grad school because you feel like you have to, because that's the next thing to do. It may not be the next thing to do.
I also want to build off of what George was saying. That's a really good point. One thing to keep in mind with that is burnout, because grad school is a very long time. It is going to be 5 to 6 years of your life. And if you if you went straight from high school to undergrad, and then after those 4 years of undergrad, you're going to go straight into grad school, just know that you're going to be in there for a long time. So like you want to make sure that you're not completely burned out of school, because you're going to need to take more classes or do more research in grad school as well. So just being aware of that. And it's kind of a cop-out answer, but in terms of knowing if you're going to take a gap year, you'll know. It's like a feeling of, like what George was saying, like this apprehension of you feel nervous about going or anything like that. And then also grad school is going to always be there. So like if you decide to go work in the industry for a couple years, then go back to it. It's fine. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. But a big question that, for example, for my case, the decision to take a gap year or not boiled down to what was I going to do in my gap year. And if you feel like, oh, you want to go work in industry, you want to go try this internship or try this other field, good for you. You can do that. But just make sure that you're not just like, I'm just going to like sit at home for my gap year. Because then it's like you want to still make sure that you like know what you want to do. Otherwise, people will ask you, then what did you do in your gap year? And you want to make sure that you like know that you have something that like this is what my gap year was about, rather than just like I didn't make a decision kind of gap year, if that makes sense.
And to provide, I know I said I worked a little bit before going back to graduate school, PhD for my case, to provide like an alternative argument or viewpoint. Like I know there's like there is a bit of downside or risk to working before going back to school, in that you can end up just liking work so much that you don't want to go back. I guess this is more from my experience being in like CS or kind of close to tech. But like, if you have a nice job where the salary is nice and the work's not like, super stressful, you can end up, just liking it so much that it's hard to convince yourself to go back to grad school, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a thing to keep in mind. And plus, if you've been out for long enough, like there is a bit of transition going back to the school mentality of, or the math that you've forgotten, or, being in the class mode, or things like that.
And also going into like the specifics of the timeline of when you should be applying to grad school. So if you're planning on going to grad school like right after undergrad, you should be applying on your first semester of your senior year. So applications for PhD for most PhD programs, like the deadline is like late fall-ish. That's when you should be applying. For masters, it's usually like in the spring. So just keep that in mind as well. I just wanted to add that if anybody had any questions about that.
Also, if you're applying internationally, the deadlines for applications are usually different times if you're applying for like a master's in Europe or something like that. And I also wanted to point out that, you know, everybody's saying that when should you apply to grad school? And I agree with what everybody said about you should apply, you know, pretty much when you feel you're ready. And you should also, let's say you get into grad school and you're like, this isn't right. You can apply again a second year. That's what happened to me. I applied 2 years. The first year I got into school and I was like, I don't want to go there. So I applied another year. And then I went, and then I came to Cornell. So apply whenever you feel like it.
There's an important thing that Brian also brought up about grad timelines, like when to apply. Be aware of rolling admissions too. Some schools like in Canada or Europe have different timelines and also have rolling admission. So just know what that means and how that affects your application. Typically, I think in the US, a lot of places don't do rolling admission, but there are always exceptions, so just be aware of which schools do and don't have rolling admission.
Yeah, and going back to the gap years or like, you know, thinking of working, you know, for a few years, if you're thinking of doing that, like remember to put that in your application for graduate school, like, because, you know, like the first thing that they're going to ask you when you go in for an interview is like, why did you decide to take a gap year? Like, why did you decide to go to work? You know, like, and you have to have an answer for that as well.
Yeah, these are great answers. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, this is just another thing I just thought of and I wanted to add in too. With the question of taking a gap year though, it is a very important question. So don't just brush it off as like, oh, like all my friends are getting jobs, all my friends are going to grad school, I need to like immediately do something too. Because burnout, especially from taking classes of all through your undergrad and through high school and education, is very real. So even if you decide to not take a gap year, but you feel like, oh, I might get burned out, after you graduate the summer before starting grad school, just take those months to just really relax and unplug, to like mentally prepare yourself for grad school. Otherwise, the reality of facing burnout is very real during grad school, and you want to make sure that you're not, you know, setting yourself up for failure before you even get to grad school because you're just not taking a break.
That's great. That's really good advice, guys. Let's go to the second question for this round. So the second question, we already touched on this a little bit, but let's go back to it. So what is the application process like? And any advice on how to prepare or any important things to keep in mind for this process?
Start early. I think that's the most important thing. You know, especially like for PhD programs, I think the most important part of your application is your personal statement. And in your personal statement, you want to show that you can actually write about, you know, your research. As you know, like as it has already been mentioned, for PhD programs, research is very important. And your ability to talk about your research in a cohesive and concise way, it's really important for grad schools. That's something that they're looking for. That's a skill that you know, like you don't have to have mastered by the time that you apply for grad school, but that's a skill that you're going to be working on during grad school. So schools want to look at that. The other thing, you know, like that's also really important for grad school is remember to ask for recommendations early, and remember to be on top of your professors to send those recommendations in. The second most important part of, you know, like a grad school application is those recommendation letters. So definitely try to build relationships with your professors, especially like professors that are in the field of study that you want to go into. So for example, I read there was a question about, you know, like what about, you know, like if you're studying in another field and you want to go to grad school for another field. So look for professors, take classes from that other field that you're interested in, if you have the ability to do so, and ask for recommendation letters from those professors. And again, like try, like, you know, go to office hours. It might be a little bit hard right now during some times, but go to office hours, get to know your professors, ask them for help, you know, like talk to them like about what you want to do, like, you know, like talk to them about grad school, like ask, you know, like ask for a meeting and tell them like, hey, like I'm interested in grad school, like can we talk? And like I'm almost sure that like that almost every professor is going to say yes, let's do that, because that's probably one of the reasons why they decided to become professors, because they wanted to help other students. And I'll just shut up now.
To get us all on the same page in terms of like the nuts and bolts of the application process. So like Brian said, you apply in your fall semester for like the written application part basically. So around, I think, early December, late November is when a lot of them are due. And then you're done. You wait until I think like January or February-ish where people start sending out like interview invites. Most programs have an interview. Some don't. Some do. And then in like February-ish, you'll fly out there in person. But depending on when you're applying, that might be over Zoom this year. And you'll do an interview with various PIs or people in the labs at those schools. And then you'll wait to hear back. Usually around like March, end of March, early April is when you'll hear back from schools. So it's kind of like applying to undergrad all over again, but definitely its own flavor too. And I just wanted to say with like what Brian was saying, like it's a long process. It definitely is a long process, and I think the reason it takes so long is that most of it is about soul searching. Is that like you just genuinely have to ask yourself these questions of like, what are you passionate about? What do you want to study? What can you see yourself studying for the next 6 years? Why is this school attract you so much? Why is this lab, this professor doing things that you are interested in? Why are they the best match for you or something? And it's like in undergrad, it was more like you were applying to the school itself. Like, oh, I really love Cornell because of XYZ reason. But for grad school, it's definitely much more of like, this program has the research or the facilities or the resources that I need to succeed because I'm interested in XYZ topic. And that's why this is like the fit for me, because of here are my research interests, or here's what I've done in the past.
Yeah. Yes, some programs accept you flat out, and some they accept you for an interview that you go to, and then you actually go and visit the school. As he was saying before, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work logistically now with all that's happening in the world. But I would definitely recommend that one of the more important things to keep in mind is the atmosphere that you will be around, or at least be living in and exposed to for the next 4 to 6 years. If it's possible at all to visit the school and the labs and the offices and just meeting other grad students that are in the program, that's the reason why I accepted Cornell. I applied to 14 different grad schools, which is a bit excessive and unnecessary. So don't do it if you want to keep your sanity at that time. But I was accepted to a number of different programs. But when I came to visit this school in particular, it felt like the right fit. And so if you can visit, I highly suggest that you visit. And
I guess
I'll fly you out, and they will pay for you to go there, and they will pay for the hotel room and all the stuff. So you don't have to worry about that.
In for PhD programs, and I don't know if for all PhD programs, but at least for STEM programs, STEM PhD programs, it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
They give you a lot of food too. Lots of food and lots of alcohol if you're of age.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have no idea what science-related PhD programs do, but that is the science STEM-related PhD application acceptance experience, I guess you can say.
I just wanted to say, so one part that I think a lot of people don't talk about when they're talking about the application process is the part of choosing what schools to apply to. And I think it's really important for your application process, but also for choosing the schools. You want to be looking up not just the program, and like the program has, research facilities that will facilitate the kind of research I'm interested in, but you want to know that there's like at least two, not just one professor that that you're interested in. This is for PhD programs. At least 2 professors that you're really interested in working with. And then I think one of the most important parts of the application process that's before it is email those professors. Email them and ask them if you can Skype with them or talk to them about the research that you're interested in. And right there, you're going to get to know if they're rude in the emails and stuff, you're kind of going to get to know if you don't want to work with that person. Because as George was saying, you know, the city you live in is going to be really important, but also the professor that's going to be your boss that you're going to meet with maybe multiple times a week. If they seem like the kind of person who's mean or something like that, don't apply to that school. Don't waste your time and your money doing that. So definitely email these people beforehand, and also emailing them is going to help you on the application process, because they're going to say, oh, I remember that kid. He's the one who studied X, Y, and Z, and I remember this because I talked to him in the email. And yeah, I just think that's a really important thing to do.
Adding in, I think I guess I will, to say something different, I will harp on, at least in CS, or kind of what I've seen in the application process, is from the reviewing side, like the importance of recommendation letters. Because like, again, I think because the panel is primarily or totally PhD students, we're talking from the PhD student perspective, but like if you're applying to a PhD program, and I know most about STEM programs because I'm in STEM, like you are there to do research. So, you know, the whole point of the application is for you to demonstrate your ability to do research. And one of the major things in doing so, in like demonstrating your abilities through the recommendation letters, again, ideally through at least one, it doesn't have to be all of them, but like at least one, with having at least one recommendation letter writer who has done research with you, because sometimes, you know, it can be hard to write a good personal statement. Often, at least, so I was a reviewer for our PhD applications last year. You know, sometimes, you know, the personal statement isn't that well written, but we try not to fault the student just because that's a thing you need to learn. And at that point in your career, you might not have learned it yet. So if that happens, we often look at the recommendation letters as a way to gauge like who you are as a student, because, you know, if you're a faculty member or like someone more experienced writing, there's a little bit more kind of trust in, you know, that they can write a clear letter, that kind of the signals from the recommendation letters, I guess, are trusted and are seen as very strong indicators of, you know, who are you as an applicant. So I would just make sure that, like, and this is a whole nother thing about, like, you know, how do you find people to write you letters? And this is like a thing that I was like, you know, not stressed, but like occupied with during my undergrad. And it's just kind of this thing where you just have to like get to know people. So, you know, professors from class, or if you've TA'd with someone, or if you can do research with someone, there are these kind of like tried and true approaches. And I think you kind of just have to like put yourself out there a little bit, and like don't be annoying, but like you can, like, you know, be a little proactive, and like kind of if you can be, you know, the student to kind of reach out a little more, like kind of put your face out there a little more, you can hopefully make a good impression.
That's great, guys. Sorry.
I wanted to add something really quick before. Yeah. So in your personal statement, remember to add why you are applying for that school, why you're interested in it. Like, is it the professors? Like what Freddie and Mitch was saying. Like remember to show your interest in your personal statement.
That was great, guys. Lots of really good answers. So let's move on to a quick like mini Q&A for round 2, just about the application process. So Lizzie, do you want to see if there's any questions we have?
Yeah, so I appreciate that the panelists are actually answering some of them by typing them. There are a few questions about letters of recommendation, and I know it's also been answered in the chat. So one question that I have here in the Q&A, it says, I don't know how I would go about asking for letters of recommendation to apply. I don't have any close connections with professors or professionals at the moment. So if anyone has any advice on that, I know there may be some repeat and crossover from the chat, but if you want to explain again.
I mean, in that case, like, in an ideal world, you would find people that you have close relationships with, like who've seen you do research or worked with you on projects, but also at the same time, you can ask professors who've taught you before. Like, I asked one of my recommendation letter writers, I never did research with, but he taught a class that I really enjoyed and felt like I vibed with. So I just reached out to him and asked for a letter. So that's fine too. Um, it's the rec letters are important to see like yes how you research and how you what you're interested in, but also just like how you think. So if like in that class you like ask questions or something or like were really engaged by it, then like the professor's going to notice that and going to see what that is like. So then when they write your recommendation, it's like, oh yeah, so and so was really engaged about this topic or um, asked really great questions or something. So that's an option too. It's not explicitly like people you've done research with.
And I guess to like at least my belief is that like you should have like for my I had three rec letter writers. One was a professor who I did research with, and then one was one who I TA'd with, and then one was my boss from industry. So like I think it's important to have still at least one rec letter writer who has done research with you, at least for, I guess, speaking to my experience as a CS PhD applicant and student. I guess if you don't have anyone who you've done research with, I think it would be good to try and do research with someone. If the, I guess, if like, you know, you feel like you're running out of time to do research, maybe this is an indication that like you could do a master's, or maybe you could stay an extra summer. This kind of gets into particulars, but I think it's good to still have at least one professor who you've done research with.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to add, I know that we have all been saying regarding your or how research makes your application look, but irrespective of that, you should do research anyway before you start grad school just to see if you like it. Because if you don't like it, then grad school is probably not the best avenue to go. So just for your own sake, to see if you're even interested, if you really like research, then it's what you should do, definitely. But so not only for the application process, but for you as a person.
I think it's also important to note that research takes many different forms too. So it's not explicitly like I did an honors thesis or I got this paper published or something. It can be a lot of different things. So for example, when I was an undergrad, I worked in the lab and there was a person in the lab, she's a second year grad student now, but she actually like graduated from undergrad, bounced around in a bunch of different careers, and then started working as a lab technician, just helping out on other people's projects and getting familiar with how lab works. And she also was like a head TA for something. So like she taught classes too, but like wasn't explicitly like she's the head of this project and this is her paper that she's published or something. So then when she applied to grad programs, they were like, this is really great research experience still. We value it. And she ended up getting into a program. So like just knowing that it doesn't have to be as formal as you think it is.
Okay, great. Another question we have is when exactly do you ask for letters of rec? For example, if you take a gap year but know you're going to apply to grad school, do you ask a professor before or after you graduate?
I would say if you are sure that you're going to take a gap year, I would ask for the letters of recommendation before you graduate. And if you already have someone in mind, just do it. You know, like you just ask them that, hey, like, you know, like I'm gonna be taking a gap year, but I would like to ask you for a letter of recommendation. I don't know if you might be, you know, like if you might want to like write it before you forget who I am, or you know, like forget, you know, like don't remember as well. Because you know, like professors have so many students, they have so many responsibilities. You know, like if you talk to them like after like a year or 2 years after taking their class, they might not remember you, and you know, like that's not their fault. You know, like they have so many responsibilities. So and that's your responsibility, right? Making it a priority that they can write that letter of recommendation because you've talked to them, they know you. For example, one of the professors that I asked for a letter of recommendation, I actually took a class with her like my sophomore year, but I kept in communication with her all the way up till senior year, so that she would, you know, she would remember me, right? Because like if you were gonna ask for that letter of recommendation from a professor that you had your freshman year and you've never talked to her after the class ended. Like, you know, like the professor is gonna say like, hey, like, I'm sorry, like, I know you did great in the class because I can look at my grades, but I don't remember who you are. So definitely be on top of that.
Also, to add on, I think there's this is like, I feel like a general life skill that I learned in undergrad, but like there's this it's a skill of like how to interact with people who are much busier than you, and who will like probably forget about your interaction maybe like 30 seconds after it happens. Like, you know, interacting with professors, like they are friendly, they do want to help, but they're just so busy, and like you're like relatively lower on the totem pole of like their priorities, that it like it's good to be a little bit do the extra legwork, so it's really easy for them to help you with whatever you you want to talk to them about. So like it's yeah, I think it's just a good skill to practice of how to like, you know, make sure you like stay on the radar, make sure you like you know them or get to know them, given that like, you know, they have a lot more things going on in their orbit than just talking to you.
That was really good advice, guys. All right, in the interest of time, sorry.
I just wanted to add a really quick thing. This is definitely a tangent for rec letters, but I think it's still important too. Afterwards, after you've applied, after you like everything's sent off, they've written your letter and you're done, make sure you write them a thank you card or something. Because I mean, like they took the time to write you this letter that could be the thing that gets you into grad school. So it's, you know, take 30 to 60 seconds out of your day to write them a thank you card and give it to them, because that'll be a really nice gesture, and a lot of people don't do it anymore. So then like down the road, if you're looking for other rec letters, they'll be like, oh yeah, you're the person who wrote me this thank you card, and that like stuck with them. It's also just a really nice gesture to like pay it forward because they were nice to you.
Yeah, that was really great advice. All right, let's start round 3. So round 3 would be life in graduate school. So we're talking about kind of experiences in graduate school and how that is. So our panelists for round 3, our first question is, what does a typical week look like for a graduate student?
Okay, so one of the main differences about graduate school is you have a lot of freedom over your time, maybe even complete freedom of your time. You have very few requirements, very few deadlines, and very few evaluations. So it's really helpful to build a structure for yourself and build out your schedule. So most of my time is spent, quote, doing research. Now, what does that really mean? So here I split my time between thinking about what I'm going to do, reading the literature, seeing what others have done, planning what I'm going to do, and then doing it. For me, sometimes the doing it part is writing computer scripts and testing them, or it might be doing an experiment in the lab. Then I see the result that I got from the experiment or analysis, evaluate it, think about it, maybe read a bit more literature, and then decide what to do next. So this gets repeated multiple times. Think, read, plan, do, think, read, plan, do, think, and then eventually things shape up, hopefully, into a nice project that can be part of my thesis. So that's the research part that takes up most of my time. However, there's other parts of graduate school that are also important. So attending seminars, I normally attend 1 to 2 seminars every week. Attending lab meetings, I normally attend 1 to 2 per week. Also informal interactions with colleagues is also an important part of graduate school that normally a few times per week or even sometimes every day. And also other types of service committee meetings all are part of my typical week in grad school.
So I found that what a typical week looks like can really change depending on what subject area you're in. So for me as a chemist, I found it's really hectic, and I actually have quite a few scheduled things in my week, and it actually changes year by year. So your first year, you're expected to uphold 3 jobs. So you're expected to TA, and you normally teach a lab course. You're also expected to take courses, 3 each semester. And then you're also are supposed to do research in the lab, and it's a huge juggling act. Most of us joke that doing that first year is trying to do 3 full-time jobs at once, and normally one of them has to slide. So people tend to focus on their TA because that's what they're paid for, as well as their courses. And then as they transition into their second year, they start to focus more on lab research. I'm in my second year now, and your second year you still TA and you also do research. And it's kind of interesting because you have to set up things in the lab, and normally the experiments will have to run for 6 hours, and when the 6 hours are up, you have to be there in order to stop the reaction so things don't get ruined. So you have to be really careful with planning ahead because your TAing schedule is set as well. So you cannot set up a 6-hour reaction that's going to end like while you're teaching the middle of the class, because you can't leave. And it also, it tends to ease up as you get into your 3rd to 5th years. So that's when you get to focus on just research, which is really nice, less hectic. In terms of hour commitments, normally TAing takes up 15 hours a week, and then you're expected to be in lab, if you have a reasonable boss, around 50 to 60 hours a week. And if your boss is a little more unreasonable, somewhere between 70 and 80. Normally people do this by working Monday through Friday and either a half day or full day on Saturday, but there is still some flexibility there. So if you wanted to travel for a weekend, you could work Saturday and Sunday one weekend and then take off the next weekend. And you can find out what your boss is like by asking people in the group you're in before you join it. So you can ask, hey, like, am I expected to be here on Christmas, or like, how do vacation days work? And I found that to be really helpful in deciding where I wanted to do research.
All right, that was great. We can move on to the next question. So the question 2 for round 3 is, what is something you wish you knew before attending graduate school?
So I think I'm gonna start with this one. So the first thing I wish that I knew is that you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. So I want to echo, first of all, what the last person said, is that like your first year is going to be your hardest year. So you're balancing all these new roles in your life. And typically you move to go somewhere new for graduate school. So you're settling into a new city, maybe even a new state. And you're just juggling a lot of things. So don't be so hard on yourself. And secondly, you should seek help when you need it. So your field administrators, like they're going to be called your DGSs. They're really important, good resources. Their job is basically to make sure that you're successful. So reach out to them if you have problems. And if you're going through mental health problems, don't push them to the side. You should put that at the forefront of things you're worried about. And so for us at Cornell, we can get online, we can make an appointment to see a counselor or a doctor. So you should just get it out of the way and do it and work on your mental health. And so programs are different depending on what program you join. Lots of programs, like for mine is genetics. For my first year, I did these things called rotations. And a rotation is where you spend a couple to a few months time in different professors' labs to basically try to figure out if they're a good fit for you and if you're a good fit for the lab. And so if you are rotating, you want to figure out professors that you want to rotate with, you should go talk to people that are in that lab, people that have rotated with them previously, and you should meet with the professor prior to rotating with them. And if something feels wrong, if you just get a weird vibe from the professor or something, you should just trust your gut. And I don't think that you should waste your time trying to make a rotation work if it's just not working. Oftentimes you can drop out of that particular rotation and just join a different lab and have a better experience. And lastly, when you're looking to join a lab directly or through rotation, make sure that you have an open dialogue with the professor about joining their lab, because sometimes professors can make assumptions about your interest in joining their lab. And so if they perceive that you're not interested in joining their lab, for example, but you really are, then you could actually miss out on a chance to join their lab just because they're looking at other students who they think are more interested. So that's my bit.
For me personally, something that took me by a little bit of a surprise in grad school was how little structure there is in graduate school. This is also something that Julian was talking about earlier, because as an undergrad, there are like prelims, there are finals, there are assignments every week, every other week, and you're just getting a lot of feedback all the time, sometimes maybe more than what you want. But in graduate school, for us at least, it's just an annual evaluation. That's like the only time in a year where you get like formal feedback from your advisors and your committee members. And people have obviously told me this when I was applying to graduate school, but I think that I only like really internalized it in my second or my third year. And when it happened, it was such a surprise to my daily research. So I guess my suggestion is to, like, as Julian suggested, to find your own structure. And also, if feedback is something that's really important to you, don't be afraid to ask for it from your advisors.
What I would say also is to kind of rethink a common attitude that I know I personally had probably when I was an undergrad, that, oh, I just got to work really hard and make it through X more years, and then it's going to get better, less busy, easier. When I came to graduate school, I told myself I need to change that attitude. I am a scientist. This is my career. This is my life. I want to keep my good habits. Try not to just make it not to just make it through waiting for things to get easier. Find ways to really enjoy your life, pursue your passions outside of grad school while you're in grad school. That was really important for me. Another thing I want to briefly mention, because some of the panelists have been talking about it, is working hours. Now, you don't have to work long, crazy hours like some people are working, and I would suggest if your boss is asking you to work 80 hours a week, that's a major red flag. Personally, I work 40 hours per week, a regular amount of work hours. It might fluctuate to be a little bit higher some weeks. But if your boss tells you you need to work more hours, or if you find in your interviews or rotations that you should be asking these questions, and if you're uncomfortable with the amount of hours you're being asked to work, then that's definitely a red flag for you to keep an eye on and maybe choose another lab or another program.
One of the things, oh, sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to throw something in really quick that a lot of people actually don't know about. Even the field heads typically don't know, is that once you get into a program at a particular college, you can actually pretty easily field jump. So if I wanted to go from genetics to the molecular biology and cell biology or something like that, that is something that I could do. And that would be partnered through the graduate school. So you could make that jump if you wanted to.
For me, one of the things that I wish I had known, and I'm still like almost still learning now, is when I got to grad school, I was really worried that other people were looking at me and trying to figure out if I belonged in grad school. So like if I was someone who should be there, and it made me put a lot of extra weight on my mistakes. So like if I asked something really silly in lab, or like, you know, I broke expensive glassware or something like that, I'd be like, oh no, like the people I work with, they might now know or now think that I don't belong here. And the thing that I've learned is that I'm the only one who's concerned about that. Like if that's your worry, that you're the only one who's worried. Everyone else who's there knows that you belong there. And like this year, now that I'm a second year, all of the first years who have come in, just the fact that they are in the program, like that is enough to show that they deserve to be there. So if you find yourself having those doubts, like you got into a program, like you're more than qualified and you deserve to be there.
That was really great advice, guys. Let's go into any like questions that are in the chat or in the Q&A for our round 3 panelists about life in graduate school. Lizzie, do we have any questions there?
I don't see any questions, but we can just merge this into the big Q&A. This is the opportunity to ask any questions about anything. We are going to limit each question to 2 panelists to answer each one, just so we can maximize the amount of questions answered. We really appreciate that we have so many great and wise grad students here, so we just want to be able to hear from everyone and answer every question. So one just came in. Christopher asks, if you have interests outside of your field, are you allowed to take classes from other departments / interact with faculty? In parentheses, he wrote, provided you stay on top of your work.
Yeah, I mean, at least at Cornell, we're allowed to take, you know, whatever class we want pretty much free of tuition charge. So it's not necessarily like if it has an associated fee, we still have to pay for that. But assuming that you're still keeping on track with all your responsibilities in lab and, you know, teaching or whatever else you may be doing at a given time, you can take whatever you want in your free time.
I wanted to add on to this. There are just so many PE classes here that are available that are really fun to take. And I would not recommend that anyone do what I did, but I took like 3 years of Japanese just for fun. It was very intensive, so I wouldn't recommend that, but as long as you can fit it in your schedule and hopefully keep your workload up, then it's fine with your advisor. Then it's all good.
Okay, great. Another question is it true that most PhDs want to teach / be professor?
I would say, actually, no, it's not. In my experience, a lot of people in their PhD program come in unsure of what they want to do after, and that's totally okay. And what they do after, a significant percent don't go on to be a professor, but do other jobs in industry or science communication, science publishing, any other types of jobs. So you definitely don't, you will still belong no matter what career path you envision for yourself.
It might be different for humanities PhDs. I believe in that sense, the career options are more limited, right? Because there's not like a huge industry, but there's also like, you know, there's also government jobs, and a lot of PhD students also, PhD graduates also go in to fulfill those as well.
I would say also a possibility is going to medical school after a PhD. Some people go to med school, then they get a PhD or vice versa. So you can always go down that route as well and end up being a medical doctor who has, you know, treats patients and also does research, or maybe you want to just do research or just treat patients, but that's definitely an option as well.
Something important to remember is that PhD or grad school in general, is a big part of it is teaching you how to think well, like how to ask questions and look at things from different perspectives. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become a professor. Like a lot of people will go on to different jobs, like maybe they go to consulting or maybe they go work at a startup. So like it's important to remember that it's a lot of the soft skills that you gain from a PhD too, not just like your specialty in a field.
Amazing. And next question, how does the financial cost of grad school compare to undergrad? I have concerns for dealing with loans from undergrad plus grad school loans.
So depending on your subject,
Go for it, it's all you.
yeah, thanks. Depending on your subject, you can often be paid to go to grad school. So certainly for most STEM fields, you're paid, and it can come from a variety of different sources. So I'm currently paid because I'm a teaching assistant. Other people are paid in later years for their research, and you can also apply for grants that cover the cost of funding. I know not all humanities graduate degrees are covered, but I do know that often at top tier schools, so places like Cornell or my undergrad, the University of Pennsylvania, they cover the cost of obtaining a PhD for all subject matters. So that's something to definitely check when you apply, which is awesome.
Also, just on top of that, it's so they not only do they pay you, so they pay your tuition and for your healthcare as well. So you get like a stipend that, depending on the school, it's going to vary in amount, but you know, like the stipend here is pretty livable, I think, for most programs. And then they also cover your entire tuition, so you shouldn't really have too many fees associated with grad school, and you certainly shouldn't need loans for paying for grad school.
But it's different from master's program because there's I think there's not a lot of support for people who are getting masters. So you might want to look for an external source of fellowship before you apply for just a master program.
Yeah, although there in certain schools, you could also teach being a master's student, and that would also cover your costs. So it depends on the program and the school as well.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next question. Ananya asks, I've heard it's difficult to make sure that you aren't trapped in grad school and make sure that you're actively working towards your degree. How do you continue to push forward and continuously make progress on your thesis? I'm planning on pursuing an MD, PhD, and hope not to spend more than 8 to 10 years in grad school.
So a lot of this at least boils down to your advisor helping out with this. One thing I've seen like almost everyone do in grad school is they will have a hobby outside of their PhD. So like for me, that hobby is soccer, but I've heard like mixology, dancing, like pretty much anything you can think of, like to do something outside that like kind of helps you recenter when you go back to your work. But yeah, I think it's just sort of the work-life balance things that you've been hearing out, like all of the panelists talk about in the panel. Like I think that really kind of comes back to play, where if you can make sure you take care of your whole person, like then it becomes much easier to start making progress on your degree and making sure that you can do that and put in the mental effort and so on to do so.
Mm-hmm. To add on to that, when you're usually like after your second year, in most PhD programs, you have to choose a committee. So a committee is composed by your advisor and then other multiple faculty from your program, or at the school where you're at. And basically like their job as being part of your committee is make sure that like that you're doing progress and that you graduate, right? That's the whole point that you're in grad school for, getting your degree. So they're gonna be helping you with like, experiment planning, like, if you're running into some issues, they're gonna try to help you. And like that's a huge part of, selecting those committee members is also really important for the progress of your PhD, because they're the ones that are going to help you. And from what I understand in MD PhD programs, when you're doing your PhD, it's more accelerated. So from what I've heard, you don't do rotations when you're in an MD PhD program. You go straight into a lab and you're trying to do it as fast as possible. That's I think that's like the focus of MD PhD programs, right? Because like you don't want to spend 8 to 10 years in grad school. So that's one thing to consider as well, right? When you're in the PhD program, PhD part of that whole program, there's going to be a lot of pressure, so that you get as fast as that you move as fast as you can as well. But that's not the case when you're in just a PhD program.
Those are great answers. So we just have 2 more questions in the chat right now, and we're going to end it at these last 2. If you have any more from the attendees, if you guys have any more questions, you can reach out to the grad students. We had the slide with all of the net IDs, but if grad students, you just want to drop them in the chat right now so everyone can see them and reach out if they have questions, we'll do that. So the first of the last 2, for CS and IS, would you recommend getting a master's or PhD, and why?
So I'm from CS. So for CS, at least, I think a master's and PhD serve kind of very, very different purposes. A master's is useful to figure out if you want to do a PhD or not, if you're using the master's to sort of gain research experience. It's also useful for like additional credentialing of some kind. Like I think you get paid a little bit, you get a little bit of a salary bump if you have a master's going into industry than if you just have a bachelor's. But I'm not sure exactly how like the economics works out on that. For a PhD, it's really about like learning how to do research and becoming sort of a full-fledged researcher. So the types of jobs and the types of role you'll play, even as an engineer at a like in industry, is very different after a PhD than a master's. So it's like kind of just, do you want the research skill set or not? And I think it's just these are just very different degrees and they're very different career choices. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to you more about like your individual situation if you want to shoot me an email.
Between
also to
NCS.
add, also to add, so at Cornell, there's a difference in CS. There's a difference between the Masters of Science and the Masters of Engineering program. I'm not sure how it's at different schools, but at Cornell's CS department, the MEng is more of a pre-professional program where I think you primarily take classes. And I think the goal is to get a job in software engineering or some sort of related role. The MS program is more of like, is more research focused, is more like designed for preparation to do a PhD. So there's that difference. And Cornell, they might be so at other programs. And yeah, like Sumia said, there's kind of the pre-professional for masters versus like more research focused for the PhD.
Yeah,
the PhD will open up some jobs too, like especially in terms of AI and some of these jobs which don't really open up to you unless you have a PhD. You'll be able to do some of the lower level technical stuff with a master's or an MEng, but lots of them have thresholds at PhDs.
And also like what Jerry was saying about Cornell, I've seen this kind of like a master split that are masters that are more for professional development versus masters that are more, do you want to get more research experience and perhaps go on to a PhD? And there is a distinction like that in a lot of other schools as well. So this isn't something that's unique to Cornell.
And to slightly disagree with what was said before, like you can do, I would consider like fairly like involved high level things in AI ML if you have just an undergrad degree. Like you can do more things with a PhD, but if you have an undergrad or even a master's degree, like there are still plenty of things that you can, in AI ML specifically, there are plenty of positions you can get that like I would consider like very interesting and like even like slightly research flavored. So it's kind of it's yeah.
Okay, and for our final question, when choosing which grad school to apply based on your GPA/GRE/acceptance rate, are there websites that compare multiple schools?
I don't know if there's like a website that compares multiple schools, to be honest, but you can reach out to specific schools. I know it's a lot of work and ask them about that stuff, but something that was said earlier and that I'll repeat and iterate is that the GPA and the GRE scores are not the most important factor of your application. Like because of the fact that you have letters of recommendation, like typically 2 to 3, right? And a personal statement or statement of purpose, sometimes both. Like I had programs that asked me for like a research statement and a personal statement and a diversity statement, like all of these things. There's other and like your research experiences, all of that is typically weighted a lot more than your GPA or the GRE, because like for the GRE, a lot of research has come out saying that it's not a very good indicator of success in a graduate program, especially because it's like certain groups tend to do less well on the GRE than other groups. And then GPA is like, yeah, it's kind of important, I guess, but not really, because for example, like if you had a year where like a lot of stuff happened, like you had to medically withdraw, or like, you know, your dad died and all this stuff was happening, like that might have impacted your GPA, but that doesn't mean you're not like going to be successful in grad school. So typically a lot of programs look at your application holistically, and even if your GPA is not like the highest, and even if your GRE scores are not the best, you still have a good chance. Like I did not have great GRE scores, but here I am, a grad student at Cornell. So just to put that there.
Yeah, and I just want to say that you it might seem like the decision that you make now, whether or not it would be to apply to a graduate program or not, it may seem like once you make the decision, then you're locked in forever. But the reality is you can change whatever you're doing in your life at any point. I mean, I used to work in digital marketing for 4 years, and I hated it. So even though I had my degree in marketing and I had a job set up in marketing and I had everything lined up to go that direction, didn't like it, so left it. So you can apply to a graduate program and get accepted, and you think it's really what you wanted to do, and then 2 years down the line ends up not being what you wanted to do. You can master out, or you can just add it to the resume of things you've done in your life and then change what you're doing. So don't feel stuck or locked.
I wanted to add that if you're worried about your GPA, as it was mentioned before, there's programs called postbac programs where basically you are kind of an undergrad, you're taking classes, you sometimes are doing research, if it's a research postbac, and they sometimes also have some sort of like test preparation. So if you're worried about your GPA, if you are worried about you majored in something that is completely like not related to like what you want to do a PhD in, or like want to go to grad school in, I would also advise you to consider looking at postbac programs as well.
And I wanted to reemphasize George's point. So he used this phrase master out. So if you enter a PhD program and it's not working out for you and your committee doesn't think that you will be able to complete your PhD, you can basically apply instead to get a master's degree. So you will write still a master's thesis and defend your master's thesis in front of your committee, but you can exit your program as a person with a master's degree rather than a PhD. So that's what mastering out is.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you for everyone who gave such great advice, especially our graduate students. Before we wrap up, I also wanted to mention that the Cornell Undergraduate Research Board has an annual CurbX event, which is like a TEDx-style virtual presentation for Cornell undergraduates that are involved in research, and they're currently recruiting speakers. So you can scan this QR code here to apply to be a speaker for this event if you are an undergraduate student watching and are involved in research. And the form is due September 30th. And it'd be a great experience for you if you do decide to apply. And it's a quick, easy application as well. Yeah, so to wrap up, I want to thank the amazing panels of graduate students that came and shared their experiences about their path, about the application process, and also about life in graduate school. And it was an amazing time. And also remember that if you do have specific questions for specific graduate students, I believe they all most of them put their information in the chat. So you can definitely reach out to them, and they're definitely open to discussing with you about certain things. If you're maybe thinking about specific paths or maybe still thinking about graduate school, they're happy to discuss with you about that. But thank you everyone for coming. It was a great event. Thank you guys.
Yes. This event will be as well, or it has been. So we will send out an announcement. If you're on our listserv, we will send out an announcement when it goes onto our YouTube channel, the Curb YouTube channel. We also have applications open for Curb eBoard. If you would like to join, you can visit our website, any of our socials, including Instagram. They're all at the bottom of this ad, actually. But yes, once again, just want to say thank you to all of our panelists. We know that they have very busy schedules, so for them to take, like 2 hours out of their day just to be here and share their wisdom it's an honor. So thank you all again for joining us, and yeah, join Curb if you would like.